All right, more grammar. So I was supposed to have another video yesterday, but ScreenFlow, which is the app that I use to record these screencast video thingies, exploded. And so I did not have a video. So I'm going to try doing a video again. And I'm just going to briefly talk over part of what I talked about in the video that you will never see, which is this discussion by Elliot from August 13th regarding non-finite verbs, because I thought that these posts were really good, and if people are interested in learning about non-finite verb stuff, you could definitely do worse than to read these. In particular, so me and Anne had been having a discussion about a couple of sentences. This is part of a sentence, but this is the relevant part for the discussion, and then this is another sentence. And basically the issue was the participles. And pretending is a participle, and rising is a participle. So they're both, participles are a verb form which modifies nouns. They serve as like adjectives. And so the issue was, so Anne was okay with calling rising an adjective modifying sun. But she wasn't okay with treating pretending as an adjective modifying actors. And so Elliot wrote a bunch of stuff, and my takeaway from it was, I think that at some level, even though I've explicitly changed my ideas about participles and verbals to accept that they can take things like subjects and all sorts of stuff, I was still viewing this. So see, Elliot says, at a lower level, they are verbs. Rise, pretend, that's the starting point. So I think basically intuitively, I was not doing that. I was treating them as adjectives at a low level, even though if you'd asked me, I wouldn't have said that. And so then, so here's the issue. If you treat adjectives if you treat a participle as an adjective at a low level, then you can just say, okay, rising is a modifying sun. That's no problem. But then if you get into this sort of situation where the participle has like an object, then you have to decide, run into a dilemma, because like if it would be an adjective at a low level, can it still be like, then is this separate? Is the object to be judged as separate? Or can this whole thing operate as an adjective at a higher level at the same time that this is an adjective at a lower level? Because that would be a bit strange, because the whole thing about doing different levels of analysis is you do it because things serve different functions in relation to other parts of the sentence. So it would be weird if like this was an adjective modifying actors, and then this was an adjective as well modifying actors, like that whole thing together, because then you've got two levels doing the same thing in relation to the same word. So then my attempt at a solution was basically, well, maybe with maybe you can think of non-finite phrases, clauses as having like an inside and an outside, and the stuff on the inside is the subject or object or whatever, and that is part of the thing which like, so verbals serve as, something like it's a participle, so it's serving as an adjective. It's an infinitive, so it could be all sorts of stuff. It's a gerund, so it's a noun. So my idea was like, for whatever that thing that the verbal is going to be serving as at a higher level, you could say that like subjects or objects are grouped together within that. And so that's a different kind of thing. So this is an object, so this would be grouped together. And so this whole thing could serve as an adjective. And so we wouldn't look at it as an adjective. We wouldn't look at pretending as an adjective by itself. We'd look at pretending to be judges as an adjective because this is an object, and so these are close together. And that's a different sort of thing than like quickly rising, because quickly is an adverb. Adverbs, the relationship is looser. And so that was my attempt at like reasoning through this. So basically I wanted to like justify. So I think the idea was like, so this is not really grouped with anything closely, so I view this basically as an adjective, and then I could just modify sun straightforwardly. But this is grouped with this. So then if this is mistaken, but if this were at a low level an adjective and not a verb, if that's how you were looking at it, well, you still have to do something with this. And so then you have to come up with some sort of justification. Well, why don't I just treat this by itself as modifying actors, saying which actors, and then do something else with this. So if you want to have the whole expression modify actors, you need to come up with some sort of rationale. If you're viewing this as an adjective at a low level. If you're not viewing it as an adjective at a low level, if you're viewing it as like a verb type of word, then you could say, okay, well, does it have a subject or object? And then you go, okay, well, it has this object to be judges. What are they pretending to be? They're pretending to be judges. Okay. Now, is this verbal object group doing anything? Yes, it's telling you which actors. Well, which actors? The actors pretending to be judges. So you see that if you have the mistaken premise or view that this is an adjective, then you get into a lot of trouble. Like this is an adjective from the first level of analysis. But if you start with the right premise, then you can get to the adjective at a higher level and you don't run into the same sort of problem. And one point that I liked was, where is it? Oh yeah. So Eliot says, words and groups routinely play different roles at higher and lower levels. For example, when John threw the ball, the grouping based on the verb threw does not play a verb role at a higher level of analysis. Instead, it plays a clause or simple sentence role. And John threw the ball that was red. The relative clause that was red has a finite verb, not a non-finite verb. And right, and like I have no problem with that. Like I'm not like, oh well, this is partly how I decided that I think my intuition regarding participles was wrong. Like that I was thinking of them as adjectives still. Because I'm not like, oh well, this is going to be a relative clause, so is this like an adjective on its own? Like I don't have that, like I have no problem, with the analysis of this. It's like this clause has a subject, that standing for ball, a linking verb, a complement telling us about the ball, and the whole thing serves as an adjective modifying ball. There's no problem there, but I did have a problem with the pretending to be judges stuff. So I thought that was a good post. So Anne had a follow-up to one of the Eliot posts I was just talking about, where she says, how about if we say the following when analyzing pretending, and singing well wasn't enough for the actors pretending to be judges. Pretending is a verbal, a present participle. Pretending to be judges is a phrase. The phrase functions as an adjective that modifies actors. And so I think that sounds reasonable, and I think I'm realizing some more of the basis of my confusion was that essentially I was viewing participles as like the form of a verb which by itself functions as an adjective. Or actually, I mean before, and you could find some discussion history on this on the list, I was even stronger. I had an even stronger position where I was like, a participle is an adjective, full stop. The connection to verbs is like an etymological historical detail of interest to grammar nerds, but that's it. It's just an adjective. That's all. We're done. And so I think maybe the better view is like you could still roughly think of it as like, well, it's the verb form that serves as an adjective, but it's like, and detail note, it can serve as an adjective by itself, or it can serve as like the head of a clause or whatever phrase, which serves as an adjective. And at root, it's a verb. Like at the lowest level of analysis, it's a verb. So I wrote some stuff. So I was looking at this thing from Anne, and I said that sounds okay to me. And then, because we'd been talking about participles and participle phrases or participial phrases in this thread, so I said I was thinking about the idea of participial phrases. I looked up some examples online, but I'm having trouble formulating a statement of what they exactly are that I find clear and convincing. One definition I found, and there's this definition from ThoughtCo, which talks about various things. And it says, one thing is it says they're set off by commas, and all the examples that they use are set off by commas. And so I commented the set off by commas part would seem to exclude quickly rising, and the quickly rising sun shone brightly as a participial phrase. It would also exclude pretending to be judges, and singing well wasn't enough for actors. For the actors pretending to be judges. I'm not sure about this definition. The page gives various examples. Then I marked the participial phrase in asterisks. Invented by a housewife, Indiana housewife in 1889, the first dishwasher was driven by a steam engine. And then I also tried to think of some cases where verbs can serve as the head of a phrase or clause. Oops, I edited this. Which operates as an adjectives. Seems like participles, infinitives, and finite verbs and relative clauses are 3 examples. Maybe there are more. So we'll send that. I'm feeling pretty confused, so I'm just putting a confusion disclaimer. It's okay to be confused. All right, we'll send that. So let's see. All right, so Anne had been talking about this Peikoff sentence. When Jack came into the room, he began to remove his coat, a wise move. This is actually Anne's analysis. And then Anne had said, Peikoff calls when an adverbial conjunction or a conjunctive adverb. He says it's both a conjunction and an adverb. Yeah, that's pretty clear from his terminology choice. I'd rather just call it a conjunction. It joins two clauses. I agree. Most dictionaries agree that when is only a conjunction in this kind of sentence. I'm not sure if I should post all the dictionary stuff I found. I replied, you could try posting some illustrative definitions to give a sense of what you found, meaning, like, Anne doesn't have to post everything, but she could share some stuff so people have some idea. Most dictionaries, so this is Anne now, most dictionaries give some adverb definitions of when and some conjunction definitions of when. The sentence in this exercise fits a conjunction definition. Here's part of what Merriam-Webster says. At what time? When you will return. This is the adverb. And then conjunction. At or during that time while. Went fishing. When he was a boy. So Merriam-Webster splits up adverb and conjunction, but Cambridge says that when is an adverb and a conjunction. So it doesn't say which ones show when as an adverb and which show it as a conjunction. Or maybe they mean that when is both an adverb and a conjunction at the same time. Yeah, I would say if it's presenting it like this, it's reasonable to read it as like it could be, it's operating as both. Yeah, I just brought up the page here for Cambridge. Yeah, and they have, well, they have a conjunction entry. Oh, this is weird. So they have this stuff for when, conjunction, adverb, and then you've got like a bigger entry. Okay, I find the presentation here weird. We've got, is it just like the preview? What's going on here? At what time, at which time? All right, so see, I found a dictionary on my Mac, Macmillan, which has this adverb conjunction thing, but then it kind of breaks it up. See, so it's talking about when can be used in the following ways. As a conjunction connecting two clauses. When he saw me, he waved. That's clearly two clauses. As a question adverb, introducing a question or a direct or indirect question. As a relative adverb, referring back to a noun and introducing a relative clause. I remember the day. Which day? The day when the war began. That's the doing question-based analysis a little bit. Introducing a clause that is the subject of another clause, subject, object, complement. My proudest moment was, what was it? When I received the poetry prize. Okay. So I'm just going to say, I found the Cambridge Dictionary presentation a bit confusing. FYI, here's Macmillan's. I'm spelling that right, aren't I? Oh, maybe an extra I. Entry for when. And they also say it's both an adverb and conjunction, but they break up their discussion into adverb cases and conjunction cases. I should say, but they have a note. And I'll just paste the note. And we can send that. Yay. Okay. Oh, that's cool. So Anne is going through the dictionary. And she thinks the function of when is. So we got, I did tell you about it. So we've got a conversation, a discussion. I did tell you about it. When? I don't remember. And says when is an adverb. It refers back to the first sentence. There are some implied words. So the sentence when is something like, when did I tell you about it? When modifies did tell. Right, so yeah, implied words. I mean, that makes sense. Like you could read this as another way you could read it as, I did tell you about it. You did tell me about it when? I don't remember. So, okay. If you read it that way, it's clearly not conjoining like two clauses. So, and this is another one. Question words. Rearranging the subject and the verb, and then sticking the question word at the end can get you something that's a bit clearer. Because the question word at the beginning can be weird. But if you think of this as, you are going when, it could be a bit clearer. Or you could just, like the definition also fits in there. At what time, as it is, at what time are you going? Okay. What if I start going? This is especially tricky because we've got the verb in contraction with the question word, so you've really got to pull this sucker apart. So the first step is like, when is the baby due? And then you can rearrange. The baby is due when? The baby is due at what time? So as I'm going through here, I'm using a lot of, or at least I'm using a couple of things from my helpful tips, which is substituting in the different words and rearranging the words, and also thinking about implied words. So these are all very helpful because this is some of the toolkit. I mean, there's like explicit analytic steps that I have here too, thinking about sentence elements, marking phrases and clauses. But then there's also, like, a lot of this stuff is more methodical. I think there's a definite general method that you can apply, whereas this stuff is more like playing with stuff, thinking about stuff, getting a little creative. So, but it's good to do both things. So, guessing adverb modifies due. Another way to write the sentence is the baby is due when. Yes, I agree. We'll go when you're ready. So we will go when you are ready. That seems like a conjunction. Joins the two clauses, will go when you're ready. I agree. So I'm going to guess this is, so I think what's going on here, so imperative, so implied subject you, tell me to start when. So, because there's no clause here, so there's no conjunction. Yeah, I found this a bit tricky, but then I did the question-based thing in my head, and I'm like, okay. So, verb tell. Who tells? Implied you. Tells who? Me. Tells me what? To start. What about to start? When to start? So I think it's modifying. This is a case where the infinitive is actually an indirect object case, huh? Because you tell me to start. And then the John threw me the ball. So to start is a direct. And then since it's an infinitive, it can take, since it's a verb, since it's a verb, it can take an adverb. Let's see if Anne agrees. This is very exciting. Okay. When to start is an infinitive phrase that is the object of tell. This looks good. I really had to pontificate. That was a beard stroker. Okay. Ask him when he's next coming home. So you ask him, implied you, when he is next coming home. So this is a conjunction. It's joining. You ask him, and he is next coming home. Or he's coming home next if you want to. Because this next is in sort of a weird place for my preference. Did I error? Let's see. So I just asked Anne, why not a two-clause analysis on this one? Okay, so when do you expect to have the project completed by? Oops, let me not. I don't want spoilers. But yeah, I already, oop. All right. Yeah, that's an adverb. Another way of phrasing it would be, you do expect to have the project completed by when? Or if there's, I think when is an adverb that modifies completed, or if there's a by in the sentence, then by when is an adverbial preposition phrase that modifies completed, and when is a pronoun and the object of by. So I just say, not sure about the by when pronoun stuff, otherwise I agree. So the next sentence is, she was only 20 when she had her first baby, and she was only 20, she had her first baby. So when, conjunction, and agrees. He was shocked when I told him. Conjunction, yeah. I hate it when there's no one in the office. I hate it. There's no one in the office. And analyze this as conjunction. I agree. I went there when I was a child. More conjunction. I was just getting into the bath when the phone rang. More conjunction. Yeah. Let me just think about this for a second. Right, so it's a general fact of so-called subordinating conjunctions that you could either view them as a conjunction or as a relator turning something into something else. But it seems like in general Anne was doing, I mean, I could be making a total mistake here, but it'll be good to like clarify it anyway. It seems like in general Anne was doing the conjunction view, but then she went with a kind of relator view here. I don't quite follow. Also, I'm not sure offhand, but like, I think it'd be weird if a word was serving as like a relator that's making something into a direct object, but then internally within the clause it serves as an adverb. Because like if something like I can't think of when that would happen. So anyway, I'm just gonna send this. Okay. Oh. So I want to do Peikoff exercise 2 by my own self. All right. So I did my analysis, and now I'll look at Kate. I mean, Anne's. Okay. Oh yeah, I didn't even. Coming into the room, Jack began to remove his coat. Let's see. Oh, I made a number of brackets error. I got the right groupings, but the wrong. Okay. Oh, and I guess Anne is just doing phrases. Oh, so I made a mistake. This whole thing is the clause. See, for some reason I was thinking of the phrase as like, I was almost thinking of it as separate, even though this is an adjective, then it's just, see, the outline gives you the idea, right? So I'm not gonna, so Anne is correct. Okay. Otherwise, it looks good. I'm just gonna start noting, because I don't want to lose track of my errors. So for some reason, I incorrectly grouped this as a clause, even though the whole expression is the main clause. I did my own analysis. Otherwise, it was okay as far as the markings, besides an error where I didn't close out, where I omitted one right angle bracket. Okay. Action verb. I didn't specify action verb bit. Okay, subject Jack. Okay, we agree so far. Yeah. An infinitive phrase, to remove is an infinitive verbal. Code is the object of to remove. His is a possessive. Oh. And says possessive determiner. I say possessive adjective. That's. I think both are fine. Determiners are a type of adjective. You say tomato, I say tomato. Coming into the room is a participial phrase that functions as an adjective and modifies Jack. Within that phrase, into the room is a prepositional phrase that functions as an adverb and modifies the verbal coming. Its preposition into and its noun is room. The is a determiner that modifies room. Oh, I didn't do the meaning. Okay. Jack began to remove his coat upon entry into the room. Right? Or as he was entering the room. Yeah, I think that's fair. Oh yeah, for meaning, we're breaking things up more. That's right. Yeah, okay. Right, because meaning is sort of like we do a lot of stuff where we join sentences because we're making choices about what is important and what's the main idea, what's a more subordinate idea, what can be expressed in a word, what can be omitted. And so when we're doing the meaning of the expression, we want to go more back to this sort of, we want to like unzip the file of the sentence into its more constituent parts. I will send that. So Anne is quoting me from earlier this year because I'd started working on the Peikoff course and then I sort of hit the skids and then I wound up doing Eliot's thing, which I found easier and better explained. So let me look at this sentence with fresh eyes. All right, so Anne is quoting my previous analysis. So I partially misanalyzed this at first and still have an open objection to Peikoff's analysis. And initially said Turgrave sculptors was an adjectival prepositional phrase describing the type of debt. Huh. Like sculptor debt or something. Yeah, I don't think that's quite right. And I think this argument that I have that I thought up as I was doing this analysis gives some indication as to why. Because I think right, like if Italy owed a historic debt of $1 trillion, you couldn't say of $1 trillion, Italy owes a historic debt. But you can say to her great sculptors, Italy owes a historic debt. And I think that's related to the adverbial nature. So April Justin, I think, is mistaken, which is okay because he knew less things. Peikoff says sculptors is an indirect object. The debt is the object, by which I take him to mean the direct object. So the debt, direct object, is owed, verb, to the sculptors. My prior understanding was that indirect objects do not involve prepositional phrases by definition. Right, so Peikoff says sculptors is an indirect object. But I don't think that makes sense because an indirect object is, as Eliot describes it, a shortcut. They are nouns that come after verbs and have an implied to or for in front. But sculptors has an explicit to in front. So how could it be an indirect object? It's just a prepositional phrase. It's not an adjectival prepositional phrase. I think it's an adverbial prepositional phrase. I think Eliot's analysis agrees. He gives the example, I threw her the ball. Her is an indirect object, which means to her, which is a prepositional phrase modifying through, which is a verb, which would make the phrase an adverb. So I think this current analysis that I have makes sense. My prior understanding was that indirect objects do not involve prepositional phrases by definition. Yes. Okay. I give a transcript. Oh, this will be interesting. glancing, I mean, the organization is a little different, but it seems to agree in the essential. I seem to agree with myself in the essential points. One difference is that I try to break down can a bit more as a verb phrase. And I was more descriptive. Where is it? About she in my current one. But yeah. Oh, I made the same point about the fragment. Okay, so Anne says, I did look up indirect objects when I did this exercise. Some places include indirect objects introduced by to and some don't. I decided to call these direct objects. Wait. Although I don't have a reason other than it seems right to me. Wait, what is she calling direct objects? Let's see if we can figure it out. Here's my analysis. Oh, I think Anne is right here. Because I was just like, oh, it's a fragment, whatever. But it's still a group of words. So the whole thing gets brackets. I should call this summary. That might be a better name. Grammar analysis. Italy owes a historic debt to her great sculptors. So other than this part, which is Picasso, but which I find unconventional, I agree. Italy owes a debt. Yep. Preposition to. Since the indirect object is after the direct object, the preposition to is used for the indirect object. Okay, I guess that's how she's explaining it. I'm going to start replying to this because I have a few questions and issues. So where did it start? Some places. So I just said I found Eliot's view persuasive and pasted some regarding indirect objects and what they are. Where was the next thing? I agree. I initially didn't analyze this as being a noun phrase. Thanks. I just noted my argument regarding why I think to are great sculptors is an adverb, like that you move it around. So why it's not an adjective prepositional phrase? Okay. So I just pasted my analysis in. All right. Call that a video.